The Z3M has been stuck on our ramp now for about 2 to 3 weeks, which isn't really ideal. And that's because the suspension legs that we got sent out for this to replace these ones, which are the originals, or what I thought were the originals, were actually wrong. So we sent them back, got sent out some replacements, and guess what? They were wrong too. Which only leaves me with one option, and that is to put all the freshly powder coated bits back in the old shocks, which I don't really want to do, but honestly, I've got no choice. And that's because I need the car off the ramp and back on the floor. And I think the issue boils down to the fact that the springs and the shocks are probably an eye-back lowering setup, because before we sent the springs off to the powder coaters, it actually said eye-back on the springs, but there's just nothing to say that that's the same for the shocks. But then that makes sense as to why the springs don't fit the Bilstein shocks, and they also don't fit the shocks that we got from BMW, which unfortunately we've had to send back. And we're not using these shocks because they do leak a little bit, which is unfortunate because it would have been quite nice to just get these cleaned up and get them painted. So just for the time being, they go back on the car until I can figure out what I'm going to do, but at least we had to get the car off the ramp so we can move it around. And with the shocks now finally back in place, the braided lines also turned up in the post, so we fitted them, bled up the system, which means we can now crack on with getting all of the panels repaired. And I have more than got my work out with these panels because there is a ton of prep work to be getting through. And seeing as this rear quarter panel needed the most attention, I wanted to get this repaired first, which meant getting some filler in it. And when it comes to mixing up your filler, rule of thumb is that you use a golf ball size of filler to a pea size of hardener. And all I'm using this filler for is to just literally smooth off the face of the panel, with getting rid of any little dimple in the panel in which I've put in it by using the hammer and dolly. And yeah, you might be thinking that this looks like a lot of filler, but actually most of this just gets sanded off anyway. And I'm just drying it off here using my hot air gun. And if you guys don't have a hot air gun at home to hand, just go up in your missus's wardrobe, grab a hairdryer, she won't mind. It's all the same thing. And with the filler now hard enough to rub down, I got to work on shaping this wheel arch, with using some 180 on a block. Once I was happy with the overall shape, I then guy coated it using this black aerosol. Now this can be a little bit tricky, but it's also a nice little trick that I use to achieve the shape of a wheel arch, and that is by using some 1-inch masking tape, just as I am here. Once the shape of the wheel arch was masked out, I rubbed the guide coat off the filler using some 320 and keeping it on my block, which not only rubs out the 180 scratches, but it also gives me a nice guide for the wheel arch swage line to mask back onto, which if done correctly, should leave it looking like this. And then using my 1-inch masking tape again, I mask onto the other side of the swage line, and by doing this with masking tape, it doesn't allow any filler to be rubbed down under it. So once the filler and guide coat on the face of the arch is rubbed down using the 320 on my block, it will leave me with a nice crisp swage line. And all I'm left to do is to remove the masking tape. And that is feeling really nice and now ready for a coat of primer, and I'm not too far off getting the rest of these panels in primer either. The bonnet definitely being the biggest for paint, but the smallest for being repaired, because I've only got one tiny little dent in it here to do. But all the other panels, literally no more filler to go in these, other than a couple of little dents in the sill. The tailgate's pretty good, I've got to strip the paint off of them yet, and I've got the doors to get stripped out, a few parking dents in these to sort out, but overall hoping, fingers crossed, that these aren't going to be too bad, so I'm going to get these stripped out next. Oh my god, that weighs an absolute ton. So I'm gonna get these stripped out now, get this door card off. I mean, the door card isn't even that big, look at it. Why do these weigh so much? What on earth is inside these doors? But I suppose we're gonna find out in a minute. So I wanna get this check strap out, try and lose this wire, and I'm not gonna strip the door out fully, just wanna get this door card off, get the mirror out, and get the handle out on the other side, which means flipping it over. And ideally, I have made a bit of a boo-boo with this. I should have put the window down before taking the door card off, which is slightly annoying because I'm now going to have to lift this door back up to put it back on the car, to plug the loom back in, to get the window down on both doors. Oh! That wasn't supposed to happen. I genuinely think that this mirror is actually seized because they should fold in, and that is not folding in. I'll fix it. This is probably a terrible idea, especially with the pillar being freshly painted. God, that weighs a ton. I'm hoping I can get this on there so I can get this window down. Oh, yes. Thank you. So at least I got the window down, the mirror's off, which I'm going to have to sort. Yeah, that's a little bit annoying. The handles mostly stripped. This I'm not going to take out because I'm going to have to strip the whole of the inside of the door out just to get that little plastic cover off, when I can just make a nice job of just taping this out. It doesn't matter anyway because there's a plastic cover gone here, and I can generally just make a nice job of that. So yeah, no handle police in the comments, please. And I just don't want to strip the door out because look at the size of this airbag. That is absolutely huge, and I just don't really trust that being put anywhere other than being bolted onto the car where it's nice and safe. So other than me being gentle with the door and just being careful how I put it down, that can stay there. So I'm now going to get into this, get some primer on the go, and start getting a load of these panels in primer. And seeing as these were the first panels that I got repaired, these are going to be the first panels that I get primed. I've got the bonnet in here, the 2/4 and the wing at the back there. And not only that, I just really want to get some primer down on this panel to see how good my repairs come out. But I can't get much more in here anyway because this bonnet just takes up so much room. Now, as all the panels are bare metal, to give me the best fighting chance, especially in the long run, I'm going to be putting down some of this epoxy primer, which is not only going to act as a good etch, it's also really good for the bare metal and the filler because it just doesn't absorb any moisture whatsoever. So I'm going to be thinning this out around about 20%, which is also going to act as a good taxi for getting 2 really nice coats of this down on those panels. The hardness of this epoxy literally is like golden syrup. I mean, look at that. But it just smells like hair dye. Right, now this is dry enough to touch, I can actually show you how nice this repair is looking. And look at this swage line. That repair has come out so nice. Couple of little pinholes in it here and there to sort out, but overall really happy with this. So I can get all this guy coated now, rub all this down, then get it back in here for some high boil primer, then rub that down, and then get it back in here for some base and clear. So it's quite a bit of a process, but we're getting there now. And yeah, I mean, this has just wrapped this up really nicely. So it's nice to see the epoxy down finally, and get the doors back in here now they're repaired with the seals in the tailgate, and get those in epoxy next. And as a repaint, things should start moving along pretty swift for this now. I mean, we've got most of the panels primed, which means we're not too far from getting them back in the spray booth to start laying down some Estral blue. And then we can finally start bolting the panels back up to this, and it's finally going to start looking like a BMW Z3 M once again, which I cannot wait for. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. If you have, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.